Hello, everyone. So I'm sorry for my production. I know it's a little bit amateurish. No script. I haven't cleaned my room, but I do want to get my thoughts out there while this is all still fresh. So for some context, I live in a city that is, in some ways, it's considered Moscow, and in some ways, it's considered its own administrative zone. It's called Zelenograd or Zelengrad. It means the Green City, and this is in the northwest corner of Moscow. It has a population of about a quarter million people packed into a very, very small area, and so it's a super densely populated like suburb. And in late May, it had its very first ever drone strike, and so this was around 3 in the morning. It hit a building that is about 2 miles away from where we live. My wife's grandmother actually heard the strike. It hit a building that was apparently its intended target. Now, this building had some ostensible connection to the electronics industry, and my mother-in-law used to work there. She worked close by, and so we had sort of a connection to this area, albeit minimal. But that scared us quite a bit because it was an indication that now our little town, which we thought was safe, is now being targeted in some capacity. And we were scared, but then nothing happens. Life goes back to normal. And I think in June there was you hear these reports that drones were shot down in the area, but nobody hears it, nobody sees it, and then it presumably lands in some field, and then nothing happens. So it's just not very memorable. But then let me back. So now let's fast forward to the future a little bit. So this was this past weekend. This was. I'm sorry. I'm just looking at my phone to confirm the dates because um, again, I should have probably used a script. But so this was the morning of July 19th in the morning. My wife says to me, "Hey, did you hear that last night?" And I said, "No, what?" And she goes, "Oh, it was the like anti-aircraft system." And so what this is throughout Moscow, you do see these occasionally if you drive around long enough. They look like tanks, and they have what looks like a to an untrained person like me, it looks like a machine gun sort of barrel thing at the top of the tank. And these are anti-aircraft systems. How they work, no idea. But my wife did notice that there was one about 5 miles away from where we lived, and then that morning she said, "Hey, I could hear it. Like it was that's clearly what it was." And I looked up, and she told me, I just checked the news, and yeah, sure enough, they did shoot down a drone nearby, and this terrified me. I mean, it scared her too. She is almost 8 months pregnant, or 7 months. She's due in early October, so we're in kind of a fragile state. Anyway, she tells me, "Did you see this drone?" And I was like, this is scary. And I thought maybe she should go stay with her parents who live about 45 minutes away north of here. This scares me. And we're talking about this during the day on Saturday. And so we go to bed, and then at 1 a.m. in the morning, I hear it. I can hear what sounds like a cannon shot, but it sounded like it was extremely close by. And it immediately woke me. I went to I turned to my wife and say, "Did you hear that too?" And of course she had. So we're awake and we're thinking like, what's going on? And then it continues. We keep hearing these shots. I would say on average, probably every 10 minutes over the course of 2 hours. It was a very long, like, attack. So I could hear what sounds like cannons being shot pretty consistently, but then I also could very clearly hear the sounds of things crashing. And so I am unbelievably scared. And we're thinking, should we stay away from windows? What's going on? Some of the shots were so loud that the car sirens of all around our building were going off. And so we're sitting there thinking, like, what the hell is going on? We're lying in bed, and then sometime around, from my own estimation, around 3 a.m., I could begin to hear airplanes again, which signaled to me that the threat was over. And then, sure enough, I saw in the news that around 4 a.m., so my estimations were pretty close, that flights had been resumed, the threat was considered over. And so we checked the news in the morning, and it turns out that in, I think, 6 different micro districts, as they're categorized, in our city all had debris from drones in them. And these micro districts were all either in our district or like the neighboring ones. So even in a small city, this was right exactly where we are. One of the drones was shot down, and it hit a parking lot next to my son's daycare. And so we had images on the internet where you can see two cars engulfed in flames right next to my son's daycare. And another drone, which again, there was a video of this circulating around. You can see it fly like 9/11 style directly into an apartment building that is across the street from us. It's not, that might, if I say across the street from us, that might make it sound like it's closer than it actually is, but it's probably 500 yards away from us. And so it is across the street, but it's still a decent distance. But we can clearly see it from our building. We can walk, if I walk outside my building right now, I will be able to point to you exactly where the drone hit it because you can see it. It's obvious. You have all this sky rise apartment, and then at the top floor, it's totally like destroyed, or at least the most of it is visibly destroyed from the outside. And at night, it's the only floor that doesn't have lights, so it's even more obvious. But it would be obvious even it's obvious in daytime too. And my single biggest like paranoid fear of being in Russia is that a drone will hit my son's daycare. That is the biggest fear I have at any point in the day. If you stop me at any moment and say, what is your biggest fear living in Russia? It's that a drone will hit my son's daycare. And so technically a drone did not hit it, but the debris fell right next to it. And so the feeling of this was just absolutely shocking. When you're worried about something that specific and then something that low probability actually does happen, it is extremely surreal. So again, so yesterday, Sunday morning, I wake up and I go riding on my scooter to just check it out, and the area was, sectioned off by police. There were people who were like some unit in between military and police who were there. Super scary stuff. Another drone more debris was found farther down the street, and it hit a building where I used to live and where my sister-in-law now lives. And so it was just unbelievably scary stuff. We decided that it would be best because this was now a pattern, this is now a couple days in a row, we decided that my wife and son go stay with her parents in a like dacha 45 minutes north of here that was, we presume, would be safer. And I decided to stay last night just to give an on-the-ground account of, is this still happening? I mean, do I hear these anti-aircraft systems at night? Is it safe to come back? And last night, it seemed Moscow is still hit by drones, but not exactly where I live, which is our standard now for safety. I mean, are they exactly where we are? No? Okay, well then I guess it's safe. So I texted her in the morning and said, all right, no no explosions last night. Good for us. And so I'm gonna stay here one more night alone, and I'll listen as I sleep, I guess. And if everything's clear in the morning, then I will write to her, and they will come back on Wednesday. So how has this changed our assessment of living here? Well, it hasn't changed it that much. We knew this was a risk, when we came. And as far as I can tell, there's no siren system in the city. They don't have tornado sirens like we have in Kansas, where I'm from. And there's no like emergency notification thing. The only way we even knew that we were basically under attack is because of just the sounds of the anti-aircraft systems. And so a problem with that, of course, is that if the aircraft systems if they miss a drone, you don't even know that it's there. You don't know it's above you because you only hear the response to it. And so from now on, we're going to stay put, but if we hear, one of these shots, like they sound like cannon fire. If we hear one, we're going to probably have to make a decision, is it worth waking up our son and dragging my pregnant wife down to like a storage unit in our building because there are no windows and it's on the ground floor. We're gonna have to make that decision. If we hear a couple of shots and if they're super close by, then yeah, we'll obviously do it. But it puts you in this position where it's like, and like I was trying to explain to a buddy of mine, this isn't in the guidebook to life. I mean, what do you do in this situation? We can't fly anywhere. My wife is visibly pregnant. She needs a C-section in about 9 weeks. She doesn't have a tourist visa to the U.S., right? We do technically have another place we can go and live in Russia, but it's short term because it's a rural dacha, and obviously I have to work in the city center. And so what do? We just have to keep calm and carry on to some degree. Is it scary? Yes, it is. And am I optimistic this will end soon? Absolutely not. And so we have to make the best of it. We have a good life here, and we have to make the best of it. We have to live, we have to adapt, and that's it. Thank you.